The man who kept knocking it was the night of September 3rd, 2019, and it changed the way I feel about being alone at night forever. I was 21 years old, a college junior, living in a small off-campus house with my two roommates, Greg and Sean. The house wasn't anything impressive. It was the kind of one-story rental you'd expect broke college kids to afford. The walls were thin enough to hear someone coughing in the next room, and the floors squeaked like an old man's knees every time you stepped in the wrong spot. But it was cheap, close to campus, and most of the time, it felt safe. That night, though, I realized how thin the line between safe and vulnerable really was. I was asleep when the sound woke me. It was so soft at first that I thought maybe it was part of my dream. Knock, 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 3 taps, not loud, not frantic, but deliberate. I blinked my eyes open in the darkness of my room, my heart already beating faster than normal. I rolled over and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The bright screen made me squint, but I saw the time clear as 2:17 a.m. I lay there, holding my breath, waiting to hear it again. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was nothing. But then it came back. Knock, knock. My body went cold. This time I could tell it was at the front door. I sat up, listening. Nothing followed. No footsteps on the porch. No muffled voices. Just silence. That's when I remembered. Greg had told me earlier that day he was spending the night at his girlfriend's apartment, and Sean had driven home for the weekend to see his family. I was alone in the house. I pulled a hoodie over my t-shirt and slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the wood floor. The hallway creaked as I crept toward the living room. The only light was the thin slice of orange from the street lamp outside, bleeding through the blinds. I could see the front door at the end of the hall, its shadowy outline sharp in the dim. The knocks didn't come again. For a second, I almost convinced myself it was in my head. I leaned forward and looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. Relief washed over me, but only for a second. Because when I turned away from the door, I saw it, right there on the floor, a folded piece of paper. I bent down, my hands trembling slightly as I picked it up. The paper was creased sharply, folded with care. I unfolded it, and my stomach dropped. Written in jagged, uneven handwriting were 3 words, "Let me in." At first, I told myself it had to be a prank. Greg and Sean both loved screwing with me, and this was exactly their type of humor. But then I reminded myself neither of them was home. And the handwriting didn't look playful. It looked desperate, like the letters had been carved into the page by someone pressing the pen down too hard. My chest felt tight. My first instinct was to throw the note away, pretend I never saw it. But before I could even move, it happened again. Knock, knock. Knock. This time, it came from the back door. I froze. The back door led into our tiny backyard, surrounded by a leaning wooden fence and a patch of overgrown grass. To get from the front to the back, someone would have had to walk along the gravel side path. But I hadn't heard footsteps, just those knocks. I spun around, staring through the dark kitchen toward the back door. Before I could even process, another knock came. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it was from the side door, the one that led into the garage. It was like someone was circling the house, knocking at every entrance, waiting. My chest tightened as adrenaline kicked in. I bolted down the hall, back to my room, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly, it took me 2 tries to dial 911. The operator answered immediately. 911, what's your emergency? I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked anyway. Someone's knocking on my doors. They left a note. I think someone's trying to get inside. The operator's tone stayed calm. Okay, sir, what's your address? Are you alone in the home? I rattled off my address. Yes, my roommates are gone. I'm by myself. Okay, officers are on their way. Do not open the door for anyone. Stay on the line with me. Hearing that should have calmed me. But then it happened again. A knock this time. a sound like paper sliding across wood. I looked down. A folded piece of paper had just slid under my bedroom door. I felt frozen in place, every muscle tense. My hand shook as I bent down, picked it up, and slowly unfolded it. 3 new words were scrawled in the same jagged handwriting. "Why won't you?" My mouth went dry. The operator's voice broke the silence. "Sir, are you okay?" I swallowed hard. They just slid another note under my bedroom door. "They're in the house." The operator's tone sharpened. "Stay where you are. Lock the door. Officers are less than 5 minutes away." I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. The air felt heavy, thick, like the room itself was closing in on me. And then silence. No knocks. No footsteps. Nothing. Just silence. The next 10 minutes stretched like an eternity. Finally, I heard pounding, not knocks, but fists hammering on the front door. "Police!" I rushed out of my room, unlocked the front door, and practically collapsed into the arms of 2 uniformed officers. They swept through the house, checking every room, every closet, even the backyard. They found nothing, no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the dirt outside. One of the officers looked at me, his expression calm but skeptical. "You sure you didn't dream this up?" I showed him the notes. "Does this look like a dream?" He studied them for a moment, then handed them back. "Could be a prank, college kids. You said you live with roommates?" "They're not here tonight." "Well, sometimes pranks go too far. Keep your doors locked. If anything else happens, call us again." And then they left, just like that. I spent the rest of the night in the living room, all the lights on, clutching a kitchen knife in one hand. Nothing else happened. When morning finally came, I told Greg and Sean everything. They didn't believe me at first, thought it was some elaborate story I made up. But when I showed them the notes, their laughter faded. From then on, I couldn't sleep easy because the knocks didn't stop. The next night, September 4th, I woke up at the same time, 2:17 a.m. Knock, knock, knock. This time I didn't move. I just lay there in bed, staring at my locked door, holding my breath. When the sound stopped, I told myself maybe it was over. But then I heard it again, at the front door. Not at the back, but on my bedroom window. 3 slow, deliberate taps. My stomach twisted. I couldn't bring myself to look. I pulled the blanket over my head and lay there, frozen, until the sun came up. The notes kept coming. Always slipped under doors or wedged into window frames. "You looked at me. I saw you in the window. Don't pretend you don't. Remember me." I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know this person. I hadn't seen anyone. But the notes kept insisting. Greg and Sean started sleeping at their girlfriends or staying with family. They didn't want any part of what was happening. I couldn't blame them. I bought security cameras. I changed the locks. I even nailed the windows shut. But the cameras glitched every night at 2:17 a.m. Always static. Always blank for exactly 3 minutes. And every morning, there'd be another note. By the time a week had passed, I was a wreck. I barely slept. I stopped going to class. I jumped at every creak of the house. Then came the worst night, September 10th. I woke up at the usual time, 2:17 a.m., but this time, there was no knocking. No tapping. Just silence. I almost let myself believe it was finally over, until I saw it. Note taped to the inside of my bedroom door. I hadn't heard anyone come in. I hadn't seen anything. But the note was there, written in the same jagged handwriting. "You already let me in." I can't explain what happened after that. The cops never found anyone. My roommates moved out by the end of the semester, and I transferred schools the following year. But every September 3rd, I make sure I'm never home alone at 2:17 a.m. Because somewhere deep down, I know this isn't over. And sometimes, when the house is quiet, I still hear it. Knock, knock, knock. The disappearing driver will never forget what happened on the night of September 3rd, 2021. I was 25 at the time, working late shifts at a restaurant in a small town in Pennsylvania. The kind of shifts where you clock out past midnight, exhausted, with your clothes smelling like grease and dish soap. That night, I left work around 12:45 a.m. and started the 20-minute drive back to my apartment. Normally, the drive was boring, just a stretch of dark highway cutting through farmland. But that night, I'd only been on the road for about 5 minutes when I noticed headlights behind me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Cars use that road all the time. But the thing that stuck out was how close the car was following. And me, way too close. Their high beams weren't on, but the headlights were bright enough to make my rearview mirror glow. I muttered under my breath, "Back off, man." I tapped the brakes lightly, hoping the driver would get the hint. Instead, they stayed glued to my bumper. The road was empty except for us. No other cars, no houses, just fields stretching out into the darkness. It felt like the whole world had shrunk down to me, and the driver tailgating me. After a few minutes, my annoyance turned to unease. Why weren't they passing me? The road was wide open. I slowed down. So did they. I sped up. So did they. It was like they were locked onto me. I turned on the radio just to fill the silence in the car, but it didn't help. The headlights stayed in my mirror, unwavering, like eyes staring at me. Finally, I decided to pull over onto the shoulder and let them pass. I slowed to a stop, put on my hazard lights, and waited. But the car didn't pass. It stopped too, about 50 feet back, headlights still aimed directly at me. My chest tightened. The air in my car felt suffocating. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, gripping the steering wheel, my brain racing through possibilities. Was this some drunk driver messing with me? Someone I knew? Or something worse? I put my car back in drive and pulled out. The other car did the same, falling right back in line behind me. That's when I realized something. I couldn't see the driver, not a silhouette, not a head shape, nothing. The windshield looked completely black, even with my taillights reflecting off it. My pulse hammered in my throat. I decided I wasn't going to lead this person to my apartment. Instead, I took a left turn onto a narrow farm road I'd never used before. The asphalt was cracked, weeds growing through the middle. My headlights lit up rows of cornfields stretching into the distance. The car followed, always the same distance. Behind me, never closer, never farther. I was sweating now, hands slippery on the wheel. I grabbed my phone, considered calling 911, but I hesitated. What was I supposed to say? Someone's following me, but I can't describe them. It sounded crazy. I kept driving, deeper into nowhere. The corn on either side of the road loomed taller, like walls closing in. Then out of nowhere, the road ended. Just ended. The pavement crumbled into dirt, and beyond it was a locked metal gate blocking the path. I cursed under my breath, slamming on the brakes. My headlights illuminated the gate and the tall stalks swaying in the night breeze. In the rearview mirror, the car stopped too. Same distance back. For a moment, neither of us moved. My breathing was loud in the silence. Then slowly, the car's headlights began to dim. Not like they were turning off. More like they were fading, until there was nothing but darkness behind me. The car was gone. I sat there frozen, my entire body trembling. My logical brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe they turned around without me noticing. Maybe their lights malfunctioned. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I'd been watching the whole time. The car didn't drive away, it just vanished. I spun the car around and sped back down the farm road, my heart hammering. I didn't care about the speed limit. I just wanted to get back to the main road, back to civilization, back to anywhere but there. When I finally pulled into my apartment parking lot, I sat in the car for a good 10 minutes before forcing myself to go inside. I double-checked the locks on every door and window before finally collapsing on the couch. Still in my work clothes, I barely slept that night. The next day, I told a couple of coworkers what had happened. They laughed it off, said I was just tired after a long shift, maybe imagining things. But then, a week later, it happened again. I left work late, got on the highway, and the headlights appeared behind me. Same distance. Same silent persistence. Only this time, I didn't pull over. I floored it. But no matter how fast I went, the car stayed exactly the same distance behind me. Eventually, I took an exit that led into town, figuring if I drove into a populated area, they'd back off. Instead, the car followed me all the way to my street. I pulled into my apartment lot, heart racing, ready to sprint inside. But when I looked back, the car was gone. That became my new reality. Every night after work, without fail, the car would appear. Always around the same stretch of road. Always the same distance behind me. Always vanishing before I could get close enough to make out the driver. I stopped telling people about it. No one believed me. They said I was overtired, paranoid. Some even joked I was hallucinating, but it was real. I knew it was real. And then came the night that proved it. It was September 3rd, exactly a year after the first time. I'd been living with this nightmare for 12 months, dreading every late shift. That night, though, something felt different the second those headlights appeared. Because this time, the car didn't just follow. It pulled up closer. The headlights filled my rearview mirror so bright I had to squint. My knuckles went white around the steering wheel. For the first time, the car was tailgating me, practically kissing my bumper. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed the brakes. The car vanished. Not swerved off the road. Not turned away, just gone. Heart pounding, I pulled over and sat in the dark, trying to calm down. That's when I noticed something. A folded piece of paper on my passenger seat. I hadn't put it there. My stomach dropped as I picked it up with shaking hands. There were only 4 words written in jagged handwriting. Next time you drive. I moved out of that town a month later. I quit the job, broke my lease, and left. I've never told anyone the full story until now, but every year, when September 3rd rolls around, I can't help but wonder, when I'm driving at night, even in a new city, even in a new car, sometimes I catch a glimpse of headlights in the mirror, and I can never be sure if it's just another driver, or if they're still following me. The room that wasn't there. It happened on September 3rd, 2017. Back when I was still living with my parents in a 2-story house in upstate New York. Our home wasn't old or creepy. It was built in the 90s, painted beige with green shutters. The kind of cookie-cutter suburban place you'd never expect anything strange to happen in. And maybe that's why what I found that night still haunts me. I was 20 at the time, working part-time at a hardware store and saving money for school. I'd gotten home late from hanging out with a friend, and when I walked inside around 11:30 p.m., the house was dark and quiet. My parents had gone to bed early. I grabbed a soda from the fridge and headed upstairs to my room. Everything felt normal until I passed the hallway at the top of the stairs. Something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. But then I realized there was a door at the end of the hall. A door that shouldn't have been there. Our upstairs had always been simple. 4 doors. Mine, my parents', the bathroom, and the guest room. That was it. But now at the very end of the hall, past the guest room, there was another door. It looked old. The wood was darker than the rest of the trim in the house, and the knob was tarnished brass. I froze, staring at it. My soda can dripping condensation onto the carpet. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, convinced I was overtired. But when I looked again, the door was still there. I don't know what possessed me, but I walked toward it. My footsteps felt heavy, like the carpet was trying to hold me back. I reached out and touched the knob. It was cold. I turned it. The door opened. Inside was a narrow staircase leading up into darkness. My heart skipped. There was no third floor in our house. The roof sloped low. There shouldn't have been space for stairs. And yet, here they were. Stood there for a long time, torn between curiosity and fear. Finally, I grabbed the small flashlight I kept in my room, flicked it on, and started up the steps. The staircase was steep, the air growing colder with each step. The smell was strange, too dusty, but with an undertone of something sweet, almost rotten. When I reached the top, I found myself in a room, but not just any room. It looked like a child's bedroom. The walls were papered with faded blue wallpaper, decorated with cartoon moons and stars. A small wooden bed sat in the corner, neatly made with a blanket that looked decades old. Toys were scattered on the floor, wooden blocks, a stuffed rabbit with one eye missing, a toy truck with chipped paint. The whole place felt frozen in time, like no one had touched it in years. My flashlight beam swept across the room, and I noticed something else. Drawings, crayon drawings, taped haphazardly to the walls. Stick figures holding hands, a house with a sun above it. A tall, dark figure with no face. I shivered. That's when I heard it. A giggle. Soft, childlike, right behind me. I spun around, my flashlight shaking. No one was there. The staircase stretched back down into darkness. I backed toward the door, my breathing fast and shallow. That's when I noticed something else. The drawings had changed. The stick figures now had frowns. The house was on fire, and the faceless figure was closer, looming over the smaller figures. I dropped the flashlight in shock. It flickered, rolling across the floor, and in that split second of darkness, I heard the giggle again, closer this time. I bolted. I ran down the stairs 2 at a time, slammed the strange door shut behind me, and stumbled back into the hallway. My chest heaved as I leaned against the wall, my whole body trembling. When I finally looked up, the door was gone. Just smooth hallway wall where it had been. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. A dream, a hallucination. Anything, but the flashlight I'd dropped was sitting on my bedroom floor, covered in dust like it had been left in an attic for years. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't want them to think I was losing it. For a while, nothing else happened, until a year later, on the night of September 3rd, 2018. I was lying in bed when I heard it. Creak, creak. The sound of footsteps above me. In the attic. But we didn't have an attic. I sat up, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth. Then came a knock. Not at my bedroom door. From the ceiling above. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't sleep that night. After that, every September 3rd, something would happen. 1 year. I found another drawing taped to my door. This one showed my house with the faceless figure standing in the doorway. Another year. I woke up to find small, dusty footprints leading from my bed to the hallway wall where the door had once been. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew. The room was still there, waiting. The last straw came in 2021. I was packing to move out, finally ready to get my own place. It was late, around midnight, when I went upstairs to grab the last of my stuff, and there it was. The door. Back again. At the end of the hall, darker than ever, the brass knob glinting faintly in the dim light. I should have ignored it. I should have left. But something pulled me toward it, stronger than fear, stronger than logic. I opened it. The staircase waited. This time, though, I didn't need a flashlight. A faint glow lit the room above. I climbed out. The child's room was the same. The bed, the toys, the drawings. But now there was someone sitting on the bed, a little boy, maybe 6 years old. His skin was pale, his clothes old-fashioned, his eyes too dark, too deep. He smiled at me. "I was waiting for you." My throat went dry. "Who are you?" He tilted his head. "Don't you remember?" You let me in. Before I could respond, the shadows in the corners of the room shifted. They stretched, pulling together, forming the tall, faceless figure from the drawings. It loomed behind the boy, towering, featureless, its presence pressing down on me like a weight. I stumbled back toward the stairs, but the boy's voice followed me. You'll come back. We all do. I don't remember running down the stairs. I don't remember slamming the door, but I do remember this. When I turned to look back one last time, the door was gone again. Only this time I wasn't in my hallway, I was standing in the child's room again. The door behind me had vanished, and the faceless figure was still there. That was the last thing I remember before blacking out. I woke up in my bed the next morning, drenched in sweat, my belongings still packed by the cave door. The strange part? My parents swore they never saw me come home the night before. To this day, I don't know if I ever really left that room. And every September 3rd, I dread falling asleep. Because sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I swear I hear it, that soft, childlike giggle, and the creak of footsteps in the ceiling above me.